We've seen far too many anime where our protagonist is transported to another world and transforms into a massive-ass powerhouse, sometimes even overpowering. But not in this anime, so let's find out. Soma Kazuya's parents died when he was young, and he was living with his grandfather. And eventually he lived his entire life and died, leaving Kazuya alone. So it was while he was in a library that he was summoned to another world. It was the other world's Elfrieden Kingdom. They performed the hero's summoning ritual in order to compensate the Grand Chaos Empire. And why is that? Time for a history lesson. One day, a portal opened, and demons emerged from the far north, capturing nearly a third of the land with their army. To fight them, all other nations banded together, and the one that shared a border with the demons' kingdom was the Grand Chaos Empire, the largest nation. Every other nation pays them annually to keep the war going in order to keep their country from expanding its territory. And the Elfrieden Kingdom was no exception, but there was no money to give them, so they summoned a hero to give away as their annual pay to the Grand Chaos Empire. No way was Kazuya pleased with this, but since the entire Elfrieden King was on the verge of collapse due to a financial crisis, Kazuya took it upon himself to solve the kingdom's financial crisis and food shortage. With a quick glance on their entire management, Soma came up with some brilliant ideas. Seeing this, King Albert delegated all of his authority as king to Soma. In addition to crowning him king, he announced Soma's engagement to his only daughter, Princess Lisha. After hearing this news, Lisa rushed home from the army under Duke George's command. However, her parents had already made this decision. So Lisitsa suspected Soma of manipulating them. But, contrary to her expectations, Soma was uninterested in this marriage and gave her complete freedom to leave the arranged marriage at any time. Also, Soma wanted to keep the king's title only until the crisis was resolved, after which he would give it back to Lisha. So then Soma divided their nation's treasure into 3 categories in light of their financial crisis. And the ones with less historical or magical weapon use value he sold in order to raise enough funds to put his plans into action. So the second problem was food scarcity because the farmers were inky growing cotton rather than food, and now that there are many competitors in the cotton market, the price has decreased. Soma first focused on their food shortage and devised a plan to prevent it. And, while they were at it, they wanted to give Soma's power because he had been summoned, and his power was rather unusual because, unlike Overpower spell cast or anything else, his power was rather peculiar. He gained the ability to split his consciousness into other things and move them on his own. But the most important thing he lacked was manpower, so he used the broadcasting crystal to recruit people with various talents in any field where they believe they are the best. Some people were still surprised by the sudden announcement. As a result, only 5 people responded to Soma's call for talent. The first was the Dark Elf Lady, who had the warrior's pride in never bowing to anyone who did not deserve their respect. The Dark Elf is a secluded race that lives within the god-protected forest. She first explained to Soma that the forest was gradually deteriorating and that new trees were not growing. Naturally, Soma was from another world, so he knew and told her that it was all because of the old and massive trees that block sunlight from reaching the ground, preventing new trees from growing. They only need to remove a few trees and weeds, and their problem will be solved. She was astounded by Soma's wisdom and knelt, swearing to serve Soma with both her body and soul. Aside from that, it was now time for the fat ass, whose talent was exactly what Soma was looking for. He was a glutton, who knew everything about food, whether it was cheap or expensive, because it would benefit the kingdom the most because the kingdom's main problem is food scarcity. And with his knowledge, they could avoid a food shortage by showing the entire kingdom new types of dishes that are easily found. Moving on, it was time for Junadoma, a beautiful woman and a songstress whose ancestors were mermaids. So Soma gave her the task of singing a song from his world, which she accomplished flawlessly, and the entire show was broadcasting throughout the kingdom. And she was also recurred. Now it is time for the 4th person, Hakuya, who has a high IQ and enjoys reading books. Soma offered him the position of librarian, and he was also hired. But the fact that the Fifit was the lilt mystic wolf from the north indicates that she was a refugee because the demon kingdom. Her gift was animal communication, but she discovered another talent that she cannot discuss in public, so she told Soma privately, and upon hearing this, Soma worked hard not to lose his cool and to keep her talent a complete secret. After that, with only Lisha, Prime Minister Marx, and Knight Commander Ludwig in the room, to discuss about her, Soma revealed that she has the ability to communicate with demons. While searching for food in the forest one day, she came across a demon scout, and to her surprise, she was able to understand demon language. Because the kind demon let her go, she could be a valuable asset in bringing the war between mankind and the demon kind to an end. So they put her in charge of keeping track of the king's horse's health. In order to protect her, Lisa's parents adopted her as their second daughter into the royal family. And soon after, the gluttony Pancho arrived with everything that could be easily obtained to eat, and for that reason, Soma even broadcasts a cooking show for the people. And Juno was assigned the role of host. They introduced some dishes that were easily accessible, such as octopus or slime, which could be made tasty with the right ingredients. As the story progressed, Marx grew old and passed on his position as prime minister to Hakuya, who impressed him with his talent and wisdom. And since Soma was free that day, he decided to take Lisha out on a date, but with Aisha as an escort. They went to Juna's cafe for a drink, and the conversation suddenly turned to having a harem. Soma had no idea he could have his own harem even though he was engaged. So 3 of them informed him that he is a king and thus entitled to multiple wives. However, their conversation was interrupted by another 2 customers' quarrel. They are Kaede and Halbart. Kaede is a member of the Forbidden Army under direct command of the king, and Halbart is the son of a noble. Halbart was determined to join Duke George because he opposed the new king of Elfried and Soma. Other nobles were also joining George in starting a rebellion against Soma in order to depose him from the king's position. But Kaede knew how wise and intelligent Soma was, and because of new policies, those corrupt noblemen wanted to depose him. And the fact that Duke George was also taking those corrupt noblemen meant that he was one of them. And because they were childhood friends, she didn't want Halbart to end up on the wrong side. Hearing all of this, Soma interrupted them. Kaede knew he was king from the first glance, but Halbart didn't realize it got a bit rude. But it was resolved as soon as he realized he was facing Soma the king. Soma persuaded him with his words, and Halbart's father learned of his son's attempt to join the rebellion through Kaede. And his father, Glaive, has already punished his son for attempting to rebel and begged Soma to forgive him. Soma was not the type to get worked up about it, but Glaive told him in private that even Soma was troubled by the news. So, what is the news that Glaive gave to Soma? To find out, simply subscribe to the channel for more updates. Until then.